no person. With the death of the particular person, Jesus, we can now understand the true nature of Christ as universal man and not a particular man. God's oneness with man's universal human nature is not God's oneness with any particular human being or person. Absolutely, the truth of Christ is beyond the man Jesus, and, like Jesus, everyone will come to the same, seemingly unbelievable truth. The death of Christ is not the death of I am, but we are. The whole experience, God and I are one. This was the theosis that defined Jesus as a whole person, expressed by Paul. No longer I, but Christ lives in me. But here now, take away in me, and where is Christ? Who is left for Christ or even God to be in? Indeed, with no me, myself, or I, who is left to be one with God? No one. The death of Jesus' personal identity is the end of man's earthly oneness with God, and the end of the earthly Christ as well. With this death, there is no person left to be Christ. It is finished. Without the revelation we know as resurrection, this would be the end of the story. Man's earthly oneness with God, however, is not his eternal oneness. On earth, man only knows God as God exists for himself, in man and creation, ad extra, but does not know God as God exists solely in itself, ad intra. It is this transition from his earthly oneness to eternal oneness in God that defines the mystery of death, resurrection, and ascension. Apart from the original kenosis necessary to reveal the incarnation, the fathers recognized another kenosis required for the final deification of human nature. This emptying was their understanding of the passion and death of Jesus prior to his deification, resurrection, and ascension. In this final kenosis, human nature had to forfeit all it had taken on to be an individual person in this world, forfeit all the properties, accidents, attributes, characteristics of human nature that were necessary to live on earth. Thus, God's own created human nature had to forfeit its earthly life in order to return to the glory in which it was conceived. So Christ's two kenoses are the reverse of one another. Where the kenosis necessary to reveal the incarnation was inhuman, forfeiting the glory of God to take on individual personhood, this second kenosis was a return to the glory whence it had come. Although these two different kenoses have nothing in common, yet they wonderfully represent the dual natures of Christ, the first inhuman or divine, the second totally human. The true mystery of Christ's death, then, had nothing to do with Jesus' physical death, even though he certainly died. Those who think that this was merely the death of Jesus' ego, or I am, don't know what they are saying. Even Paul's no longer I affirms Paul was already beyond any egoic or subjective I. Yet beyond this subjective ego loss I, the next unsuspected event would be the disappearance of the objective in me. With the disappearance of the divine center, ground of being, there is no within anymore. For without a center, there can be no circumference, no within or without. Footnote 1, page 344. The two poles of consciousness are the subjective I and the objective me. Because the subjective only knows itself as object to itself, take away the objective pole, and there is neither I nor me. No self at all. I remember when she was arguing with one of her good friends, Nancy Baker. Hope she doesn't mind me giving you the name. Bernadette was screaming, "Take away the object! Take away the object!" And then what do you have? No subject. Anyway, the demise of the unitive state leaves no person, divine or human. But then, God created no person and united itself to no person. So now, with the death of the particular person, Jesus, we can understand the true nature of Christ as universal man, and not a particular man. Absolutely, the truth of Christ is not only beyond the man Jesus, but beyond every person. While a person can experience his oneness with God in this life, he cannot, however, experience it in God's life. While the union of natures remains, it is no longer, in this case, Jesus' human nature, but God's human nature. In God, no one has or owns a human nature. Its eternal life belongs to God alone. Where theosis served its purpose in man's earthly life, this will not work in God's eternal life, a radically different dimension of existence. So death of a person or self is the end of man's earthly oneness with God. It is finished. I'm going to stop this and get some water, and maybe you should take a break, and I'll be right back.